back in the 80s, as you probably know, smoking was starting to go down. And so the big tobacco companies looked around and thought, okay, so where are we going to get our money from if smoking is going down? They bought up the big food companies. They bought Kraft, General Foods, Nabisco, and they brought their addiction scientists from the big tobacco companies over to the big food companies. And when I say addiction scientists, I'm not talking about scientists to get you unaddicted.
Mhm.
It's the reverse of how do we get the person to eat the whole bag instead of half the bag?
Yeah.
What are the ingredients that we can include that will stimulate the opiate receptors of the brain, same opiate receptors as heroin and morphine, but instead it doesn't relieve pain or get you high. It makes you crave more of the thing. So I understand when people have a hard time making the transition. That's why I tell them, look, do little by little and go at your own pace. But try to do it as quickly as you can because the more you do put those things in your body, you're going to crave them more and more.
Yeah.
Because carbs don't stimulate. I'm sorry, carbs don't satisfy appetite; they stimulate it. Right? Carbs don't satisfy appetite; they stimulate it. That's
Hmm.
why when you eat a bunch of pasta, you're hungry in an hour, or you eat a couple slices of pizza, you can't stop. That pizza crust is you still want to put it in there. And it's just pretty amazing and that way. And so I'm just again just trying to encourage people. See, my biggest regret is having to have this life-threatening event to place me on this path.
Hmm.
um I would rather just continue have been an entrepreneur, which I was, and not have to do this. But I see it how it's helping so many people now that it's an international bestseller. I'm hearing from people all over the world. I mean, you don't make much money selling health and wellness books, believe me,
Hmm.
no matter how well it does. It's just I become wealthy in my heart when I hear from people that, wow, this has changed my life. Da, da, da. Same thing that you get all the time, I'm sure, in your YouTube feeds and success stories that I'm sure you get all the time.
Yeah. Oh, it is amazing. I
That's the
mean,
reward.
it is. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I I made my YouTube channel just because I wanted to get certain things out there and I wanted them said in a certain way. And I almost didn't do it because there are people like Dr. Baker and so on that were saying the things that I thought were important to say. But I thought, well, I sort of, maybe I'll just do it. Maybe I'm late to the game. There's already people out there talking about this sort of stuff. And I was just happy with that. I just wanted the information out there for people. And so I thought there was probably, you know, a little too late for me to get in because, it's already sort of out there. But, I decided that I wanted to sort of, put in my 2 cents. And I'm glad I did because people started saying like, wow, I've heard this stuff before, but the way you presented it, it made sense to me. And then that makes perfect sense too, because I may listen to someone and be like, oh, that makes sense. Or listen to someone else. It could be saying the same information, but it doesn't quite hit. And so, they might say something to someone else and they're like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And then someone else might say it in a different way, like it's very similar information, but presented in a different way, or maybe make a couple little points and insights that are unique to them that someone says like, okay, that makes sense now, and they start doing that. And that's why I encourage so many people. It's not me. I'm not special. It's just that, the way I say it is going to resonate with certain people that may not, that other people may not resonate with. And so that's why I try to encourage people like yourself and everyone else. It's like we need to get more voices out there because everyone's going to say this and present this in a slightly different manner. And it's going to make more sense to people, from that. And so I sort of realized that. But my whole point, I just want to get this information out there. I sort of did all the videos that I wanted to, talking about the different topics that I thought were important. And I sort of went like, I'm sort of done. I sort of said everything I wanted to say personally. And, maybe I should just leave it. I didn't want to like clog up my YouTube channel with a whole bunch of videos that were just, nonsense. And I would drown out the ones that I thought were the most important. And so I was thinking about just stopping that, but then I had, more opportunities to interview people like yourself and more people reached out. And then there were people that like I really wanted to talk to. And so I just started doing more interviews and things like that as well. And that became very helpful. And so I've continued on with it. But, you know, that was the main thing. But, by doing that, I've had people seeing these results and seeing people saying, hey, when I did this, I weighed this much, I had these issues, I had all these problems, and now all these things are gone. I've lost 80 pounds, all these sorts of things. Now my family's doing it. My wife is, reversed her diabetes and her this and her that and her autoimmunity, and our kids are doing better. All these things, and we see it all the time. 90%, 95% of the comments on my videos are like that. And so then people, so I started at first, I'm like, oh, do I really want to keep doing this? But then when I was just seeing these comments about how many people have been benefited by this, like how do you stop? I mean, how do you just say like, screw it,
Don't stop, brother. We need you out there. I'm telling you, all this
well,
information
you
is
can't.
incredible,
Yeah.
especially because you're a clinician, you're a doctor. I don't have any
Yeah.
of your experience. Well, my knowledge, I know a lot now, but
Mhm.
it's dwarfed by what you know. And so please don't stop that. At least maybe see, I'm just a lower class street kid from Philly, right? And I'm rough around the edges. And there's that old saying, you can take the kid out of Philly, but you can't take the Philly out of the kid. So that's me. And,
Yeah.
I just thought, well, I'm just going to get on there and speak to people anyway, because maybe they can relate. Maybe they have heart disease in their genetics. Their parents had it, their grandparents had it. And that's coming your way unless you get off the unholy trinity and start, getting back to the gym, doing some exercise, that kind of thing. Um, it's just really important, and I'm there with you, brother, because we need you. So great that you not stopped doing that because it's fantastic.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. Well, you can't really, like, I mean, people saying, oh, yeah, please don't stop. And I'm like, I couldn't, even if I wanted to. Like, it takes a lot of time and effort and things like that. And it takes away from work and things. But it's, you can help a lot more people this way. In my practice, I see people one-on-one, and that's great, and get more hands-on care. And, we're looking deeply into their blood work and all their different sorts of, issues. And we can do a lot of good for a lot of people. But when you're blasting this out to, the population at large and getting these videos out to people, you can just help a lot more people. And so, yeah, you really can't stop,
We really need it because here's a shocking statistic. You probably know about this. There was a study
Mhm.
just a few years ago out of Johns Hopkins, and they discovered that 74% of doctors, I mean, this exacerbates the situation we're in, right? 74% of doctors, they found, now we're talking general practitioners, family physicians, internists, and cardiologists. 74% do not know how to properly diagnose and test for prediabetes or type 2
Mhm.
diabetes. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? That's our biggest epidemic. I call it the gateway disease because once you get there and you're
Mhm.
pre-diabetic or full type 2 diabetic, and most people that are diabetic don't know it because there's so many people that can test normal because most doctors, what they're doing, as you know, they'll test A1C, fasting A1C, and fasting blood glucose. And even the American Diabetes Association, who I wouldn't trust as far as I could throw them, even they say, hey, if you just do those two, you're going to miss a lot of people because there's a lot of people that can test normal for those two, like I did, and still be a raging type 2 diabetic like I was. They don't do the OGTT with insulin. This goes back to Dr.
Mhm.
Joseph Kraft that we talked about earlier. Oral glucose tolerance test with insulin, because that way, that's how I discovered it. I was on my first hour, I was well beyond 200. And it
Mhm.
was like, holy moly, I had no idea. And then I had to start looking at my diet and everything. And, I have all that on my website, by the way, for anybody wants to know about the tests. what are the most important tests, danieltrevor.com. And just to get the information, I mean, you can order them there too, because I made a deal with Quest Diagnostics, which have thousands of locations all over the United States. But you don't have to get it from me. I'm not selling anything. I don't have powders or vitamins or anything like that, which is fine. I mean, I don't mind anybody does that. Um, it's just that I would rather see people just get the tests or use this as a reference and go, hey, doc, I'd like to get these inflammation markers. I need to know what my myeloperoxidase and my LP plaque 2 is, and to find out if I got this smoking, I call them smoke detectors because those are blood tests that, and also MACR, microalbumin creatinine ratio. They can tell if you've got the soft inflamed plaque in your arteries. Because if you don't do that, then at least you should at least get a CAC scan score, CAC, coronary artery calcium score, or a CIMT, carotid intima media thickness test. And so you know what's going on. There's some great, in my chapter 19, I go into the difference between soft, dangerous plaque and the calcified plaque. What is the difference? Aren't they both dangerous? No. This is new science too. You'd appreciate this. There was a Honda study published in JACC, Journal of the American College of Cardiology, top cardiology place on the planet. And they showed the people that had echolucent plaque, which is that's the soft, dangerous plaque, and the people that had echogenic plaque, which is the calcified plaque. All the events, heart attacks and strokes, were coming from the soft plaque, not the calcified plaque. And so it's the soft plaque that causes the heart attacks and strokes. However, in that next section, I tell what the Cleveland Clinic, which is the top, the ranked number one globally for cardiovascular care, they discovered that, and again, this is just a few years ago, which in your industry, that's like 10 minutes ago, right? Because it takes so long for new science to get down to the front lines of the doctors, let alone how long it gets to the, curriculum of the schools. And they say that the soft plaque is the dangerous plaque. If you have calcified plaque, there's 4 times as much soft, dangerous, inflamed plaque than there is the calcified plaque. So it is a good test to get because if you have an elevated score, as you know, it's supposed to be between 0 and 400, and it can go way higher than that too. But the body, as you heal, it lays down calcium. And so what can happen is as you spend a year going low carb, keto, carnivore, exercise, that kind of thing, your score can go up. And that's what the science has shown. They call it there was several studies, JAMA Cardiology and Cleveland Clinic and another place I can't remember. They call it the CAC paradox. Mm-hmm. Now, the doctors and researchers involved in the study, it wasn't a paradox to them, but they knew it would be puzzling for the patient. They go, wait a minute. I've been killing it this last year. I've been, getting like a 6-pack, and how can my score go up? What happens is the body releases calcium to heal all of the lesions that are created by the soft, inflamed, dangerous plaque, and it stabilizes the plaque. And so there are no events but then you verify that. I'm the perfect example of that. When I first got my CAC scan, it was an abysmal 600, right? And I thought, okay, I'm going to get into this. I've got my low carb people. And then I wound up in carnivore. I'm at the gym. I got a 6-pack now, HDL's 96 and my triglycerides 38, and, A1C's 5.1, everything was beautiful metabolically. But my CAC scan my score went from 600 to 2,500. Which is about 4 times as much. And that's because of all of the healing that I needed. This particular current meat body that I have, I needed that healing. And that's the reason why. So don't freak out. I tell the reader in the book, don't freak out if your score goes up. Just verify that you're in good shape by all these other tests. Mm-hmm. But I'd add that in there too.
No, definitely. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. There's a couple things I wanted to ask as well. Um, you mentioned the glycocalyx, and I've seen studies like that as well, where, after, I mean, within a couple of hours after eating carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates and sugar in particular, it destroys the glycocalyx. And you can actually see this in real time. It's sort of getting less fuzzy and less fuzzy, and then it's flat as you don't have that protection.
It's
And
worse than
and then
smoking.
yeah, and it can come back, but if you keep hitting it with carbs all the
Pounding
time,
it.
it's just constantly destroyed. So if you're doing the recommendations, I mean, let's say you're doing intermittent fasting with carbs. Okay, you destroy the glycocalyx, but it would rebuild. But if you're eating, oh, you need to have, 3 meals a day and three snacks and all that sort of garbage, and most of this is high carbohydrate, like it's never recovering. And so you don't have that defense. And I was taught in medical school that nicotine itself, one of the damaging things from smoking was just the nicotine. So even if you're having a nicotine patch, nicotine gum, or an e-cigarette or whatever, that itself directly damages the arterial lining. And so they didn't mention the glycocalyx at the time. I don't even know if they knew about it back in 2009 when they were teaching us that. But either way, nicotine could damage the lining of the arteries. And I do wonder about this. Is the nicotine itself damaging the glycocalyx, or is it causing specific damage? And and there's all these studies. We've had there's people saying that, well, if you look at the evidence, seed oils are actually really good for you. And it's just like, okay, which studies are you looking at? Because there's a lot of industry funded studies and research, and some of it's industry funded, and we don't know that it's industry funded because they don't actually have an ethics, ethical, compass. They're trying to sell a product. And,
Yes.
so the sugar company's been doing this, the tobacco companies have been doing this, and other companies have been doing this to push their product. They pay people under the table or, silently, and they don't discuss it. And so they do this research, supposedly independent research, but it's definitely not. And, we had that with the sugar companies and cholesterol. So we also had that with the tobacco industry. And now you've got all these studies coming out and people saying, well, nicotine is actually really good for you. It's nootropic. It turns your brain on. It's all these health issues and benefits. And I heard one guy say that it can melt GBM tumors in 2 days. I'm like, really? Because, I've had patients with GBM who smoked. So why wasn't that melting their GBM or preventing it from ever happening in the first place?
They need to
So,
talk to Thomas Seyfried.
well, yeah, there's that. And, I mean, certainly toxins can be used as medicine, but, I mean, really, like, you know, so the thing with nicotine, I'm curious about is like we still have these big tobacco companies. They're still the largest companies in the world. Now they own all the, Kraft and all these massive food giants. So they're the biggest food giants.
Exactly.
They're also the tobacco giants. And so there's some of the, this really undercover wealthiest organizations on planet Earth, and they have been for decades. And, sure, the tech companies are massive now as well, but these own commerce. They're all the processed food and vices and things like that. I mean, they've got a stranglehold on that. And so now all of a sudden you see all these studies coming out about how great nicotine is all of a sudden. I'm like, I'm the cynic in
Uh,
me saying like this has to be coming from them. Like I don't
no,
see
it's
how this
true.
could possibly
You
be.
know, it's when the whole thing of the money, it's just,
Mhm.
you probably saw this several years ago. Goldman Sachs,
Yeah.
they had one of their analysts do a white paper, and I can't remember the name of it. What it was about, creating cures is not good for the bottom line.
Yeah.
And the example they gave was the big pharma company Gilead Sciences came up
Hmm.
with this blockbuster drug called Harvoni, which had a 96 to 99% cure rate for hepatitis C.
Yeah, I remember when
And
that
what
came
happened?
out.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what happened? It came out, it was like $12 billion, and then within a couple years, it was down 75%, and it continued its descent after that.
Mm.
Goldman Sachs yelled at Gilead Sciences, says, "No, don't do that. We don't want that." So what they would rather have had them do is come up with a pill that the patient could take once a day for the rest of their life, or an infusion once a week or once a month. That way the profit model is over the entire lifetime.
Yeah.
We don't want
It's
to get
just
rid of
sick.
cures.
Yeah.
Come on. It's just,
Yeah.
it's insane. It's that
Yeah.
mentality. Just the same as that ischemia trial and all those that we were talking about earlier. There's no way that the board of directors or the CEO of the hospitals or the cardiology clinic are going to want to see all that revenue disappear, because that's how they build the new wing for the
Yeah.
hospital. And that, if that disappeared, there goes the beach house and the kids in Ivy League and the, Mercedes down to Wakia. I mean, it would just all change, and we can't have that.
Yeah. Well,
Just
and
like a
it,
lot of
yeah.
people in Washington D.C. right now are living off all that kind of stuff, off of
Mm.
other types of money graft and so on. But anyway,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is that I mean, that's really ghoulish, I mean, they're turning people into things and cattle, really. There's just like, how do we profit off of these people? How do we make more money off these people? Like, you're destroying people's lives.
yeah,
And so saying, no, we don't want to cure people of disease. We want to just have them treated for the disease so we can milk them and take more of their money over time. I mean, that in itself is, that's the behavior of a con artist. You're someone who's not trying to provide a good product. You're not trying to actually do something worthwhile. You're trying to screw people over and get money out of them because you just want their money. You don't care that it's damaging their health. I mean,
yeah, and
that's
I can
sick.
understand how certain doctors, and I'm sure I was just talking to a doctor friend of mine last week. He says, Daniel, I can tell people to do this and stop doing that, but they don't listen to me. So,
Yeah.
okay. So and so a lot of people have not reached a state of need of change and demand of improvement of themselves. And sometimes they need to go through a life threatening event like I did to wake up and to take the dive. And I was fortunate to be able to, you know, take the dive into the science because I'm used to studying technical data all my life. So, but people just don't have the education. There's just no. So that was the impetus behind the book because,
Yeah.
there's so many doctors they try and and a lot of doctors I feel, because I've gotten to know so many, they can't be the doctor that they first set out to be, right? Because they're working in a system that they have bosses, they got to, do this by that, and they got 7 minutes to see each patient, and they have all this computer work to do and so on. So, um, I feel for some of them, and
Mhm.
but then there's others like you're talking about where it's just downright ghoulish.
Yeah.
The average reader of Health and Wellness. It's not written for doctors or scientists, even though they need it more. But it's written for the average person to go, hey, I have that in my family. Maybe I should look into this, and that's basically what I did there. So, that I'm on the